A freezing wind slammed against the cafe windows as if demanding to be let inside, rattling the glass and sending a tremor through the quiet little bakery. On that pale winter morning, with snow piled like forgotten memories along the streets, a single father named Kalen Ward stepped into the warmth, his breath shaky, his heart even shakier. He wasn't looking for love. He wasn't even sure he remembered how to want it. All he hoped for was a cup of coffee hot enough to melt the loneliness that had been clawing at him ever since he'd lost the one person who had taught him what love was. But life has a strange way of changing course in moments when we least expect it. And for Kalen, everything shifted the instant he heard the soft, uneven tapping of metal on wood, the sound of crutches, and then saw her. Before the story continues, take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to Bright Hearts if you believe in kindness, hope, and second chances. Your support truly keeps stories like this alive. Kalen had agreed to a blind date mostly because his 8-year-old daughter, Mira, had begged him to try smiling more. He wasn't sure he belonged in the dating world again, not after losing his wife, Lena, 3 years earlier to a sudden illness that cracked his world in half. He had built a safe routine for himself: school drop-offs, lunches packed neatly into small pink containers, bedtime stories with Mira leaning against his shoulder, and work that filled the hours but not the emptiness. Dating felt like betrayal. But loneliness, when ignored long enough, becomes a quiet ache that even the strongest learn to recognize. And so, he agreed to the setup, not expecting anything, and certainly not expecting her. She arrived slowly, carefully, dressed in a warm ivory sweater that hugged her frame with soft comfort. Her name was Arabelle Knox, and she had hair like dark waves brushing her shoulders. But what struck Kalen most was the hesitation in her steps. Each movement deliberate, measured, as if she were trying her best not to disturb the world she moved through. She shifted her weight on her crutches with a practiced grace that hinted at pain but also at strength. Arabelle noticed him looking, and her eyes flickered with self-consciousness as she approached the table he had reserved. Her voice was almost a whisper, barely rising above the cafe's warm hum. She leaned in, gripping the handle of her crutch as if for courage, and said, "Please, please don't laugh at my crutches." The raw vulnerability in her tone felt like a small fist hitting his chest. Kalen blinked, taken aback, not by the crutches, but by the fear behind her words. It was the same fear he had once worn on his face when doctors told him Lena wouldn't survive. The fear of being seen as less, of being judged, of being pitted or abandoned. That kind of fear leaves a mark. Arabelle slipped into the chair opposite him, though her movements were cautious, clearly painful. She bit the inside of her lip, as if preparing for rejection. Her crutches leaned against the table like silent witnesses to every insecurity she carried. For several minutes, neither of them spoke. The bakery's golden light, soft, warm, comforting, poured over them like a quiet reassurance. The scent of cinnamon and fresh bread wrapped around the small space, but neither noticed. They were both lost in their own storms. Kalen finally gathered the courage to breathe out and ground himself. He reached for his cup of coffee, but his hand trembled slightly. Losing Lena had left him with more fear than he wanted to admit, especially the fear of caring for someone again, because caring always put him at risk of losing. But Arabelle reached up to tuck a strand of hair behind her ear, and in that simple movement, he saw something he hadn't seen in a long time. Someone else trying desperately to appear whole when they felt anything but. He recognized it because he lived it. She glanced down at her sweater, embarrassed. "I know this looks ridiculous," she murmured, gesturing to the crutches. "Most people expect someone healthier on a blind date. I almost didn't come inside. I almost turned around." Kalen swallowed. "I'm glad you didn't." Something in her eyes shimmered. Relief, disbelief, hope. Maybe all three. The conversation grew more natural as minutes passed, though each of them danced gently around their deepest truths. They talked about warm pastries, winter storms, movies that made them cry or laugh, and little bits of themselves they were willing to reveal. Arabelle shared that she had once been a competitive runner until an accident 2 years earlier left her knee shattered and her mobility permanently changed. She explained how the world looked different when you moved through it slower, how people sometimes stared, how sometimes they pretended not to see her at all. She said it with a trembling smile, trying to play it off, but her eyes gave her away. Kalen told her about Mira, Not about Lena yet. Not about the grief. Not about the nights he held on to his daughter as if she were the last piece keeping him alive. But he told her how Mira loved painting snow globes and leaving tiny sticky handprint art all over their walls. Talking about his daughter was safer. It was the part of his heart that still felt bright. Arabelle laughed at the handprint story, a soft, beautiful laugh that warmed the air between them. And for a moment, Kalen felt something inside him unclench. When the date reached its midpoint, Mira appeared. Unexpectedly, her small pink coat dusted with snowflakes as she dashed through the bakery's entrance. Kalen had forgotten her early release schedule from school that day. She ran straight into his arms, giggling, without noticing Arabelle at first. But when she did, she froze for a second, then tilted her head curiously. "Are you hurt?" Mira asked, her voice high with childlike innocence. Arabelle paused, unsure how to respond, until Mira stepped closer and gently touched one of the crutches. "My mommy had to use these too, when she hurt her ankle last winter." Kalen's heart sank briefly, not at Myra's comment, but at the word mommy. It still sliced him in ways he didn't expect. Arabelle knelt as much as her injury allowed, smiling warmly. "I'm not hurt anymore," she told the girl. "I'm just learning to move differently now." Mira nodded thoughtfully, then beamed and asked the question that made both adults choke back tears. "Do you want to sit with us?" Arabelle looked at Kalen, unsure if she was intruding. Kalen's expression softened in a way even he didn't recognize. He motioned for her to stay, so the three of them shared pastries, and Mira kept chatting, oblivious to the cautious heartbeats unfolding beside her. She showed Arabelle her drawings, swirling colors and stick figures with smiling faces, and Arabelle listened with genuine interest, her smile becoming more natural, less guarded. It was Mira who broke another silence. "Daddy doesn't smile like this for anyone," she declared matter-of-factly, making Kalen's face flush red. Arabelle ducked her head, her cheeks warming. Something in the air shifted then, something tender and fragile, like a thread connecting two hearts hesitant to believe in new beginnings. As the day stretched into early afternoon, the bakery's soft golden glow dimmed slightly, reflecting the clouds drifting outside. Arabelle's leg began to ache. Kalen could see it in the way her shoulders tensed, but she didn't complain. She never did. When it was finally time to leave, she stood slowly, gripping her crutches with effort. Kalen instinctively reached out, his hand extending beneath hers for stability. She hesitated briefly before letting her fingers rest in his palm. It wasn't romantic. It was careful, gentle, human. Outside, the snow had thickened, fluttering like tiny crystals that clung to their jackets and hair. Kalen walked her to the curb, Mira skipping ahead of them. In that moment, Arabelle looked up at him with eyes that held storms and sunshine all at once. "I'm sorry if this was too much," she whispered. "I didn't want to be a burden. Blind dates are already awkward, but with these," she lifted one crutch weakly. "People either stare too much or not at all. And sometimes they laugh. Or pity me. Or both." Kalen stepped closer, not invading her space, just enough that she could feel the sincerity in his presence. "Arabelle," he said softly, "I didn't see your crutches first." She blinked, confused, hopeful. "I saw you." Her breath hitched, and then Mira, with perfect timing, tugged Arabelle's coat and said, "I hope you come back." Daddy looked less sad today. Arabelle's eyes glistened. She bent, slowly, painfully, and pressed a kiss to the top of Myra's hair. Kalen saw it clearly then. Not just a woman learning to walk again, but a woman learning to trust again. And he wondered if maybe, just maybe, he was learning the same. Their goodbye was soft, lingering, filled with unspoken promises. Arabelle stepped into her rideshare, glancing back only once. But that one look said more than words ever could. It said, "Thank you for seeing me." It said, "Please don't disappear." And Kalen felt something deep inside him shift. The beginning of healing, a quiet thaw in the long winter of his grief. If this story touched your heart, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to Bright Hearts. Your support truly warms the stories we share.